Welcome everybody into this weekly briefing. It's good that you are all here today. I am absolutely excited about my conversation today with Mark Jones. I we've really kind of met each other more at the beginning of this year, and we've actually recorded a podcast together, which is going to come out in just the next few days. So as we're kind of kicking off this conversation, it will also continue in the podcast. We'll get more into what you do, what you've taught, and what the book is about. But I just want to introduce our guest today, Mark Jones. Mark Jones is a professor. He's actually Dean of Faculty of the Animation Arts and Design at Sheridan College in Toronto. Um, Mark, how many people do you think are in our community right now that went through your classes and courses at either Sheridan or at the Seneca Polytech? Do you know of
That's a
quite a
good
few
question.
people?
I know quite a few people, yeah, that have graduated from one of our programs over the years. And, my own professional background was in design, interactive media design primarily. And so the design community is actually really near and dear to my heart. So I know a lot of designers, know a lot of animators. Uh, Undoubtedly, some will be part of this community as well. So really excited just to make that reconnection.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so the what's burning in me and why I wanted to pull you on this podcast sooner than, or in this weekly briefing sooner or later is what's really happening in the industry. And we'll say it's absolutely been um, has intensified over the last easily 24 months. Um, and then more recently, just with what happened with Technicolor just a couple weeks ago and the thought process of this creative career that we're living out and how so volatile it can be. We could spend quite literally decades investing in a technology or a skill and then have it kind of pulled from us overnight. It's a very scary thing. So I'm guessing a lot of us who are in the creative career and are asking ourselves questions nowadays of, you know, is this worth it? Did I do something really crazy? I should have become a elementary school teacher or something like that that has more stability. And you have a pretty serious take on like what a creative career is and to not be a sellout for what you've been called to do.
Yeah, and it's good that you bring up Technicolor right off the bat because that is obviously a recent event that I think was a bomb for many people, just given the scale of it. I mean, it certainly comes on the heels of a lot of other disruptions happening in the industry. And so I think the news of loss of jobs is not a new one for many sectors right now. But there was something that I think the Technicolor announcement triggered for a lot of people because I was seeing posts on my LinkedIn around that were markedly different from some other ones, right? Like folks that I know that are prominent in the industry telling people, get out, like just leave, like there's no future for you here. And that was a shift in the discussions that I was seeing around, look, there was worry, there was people trying to support each other. They were passing along notices of jobs as much as they could. But when it came to that particular announcement, I really feel like there was a shift in the mood. And so it's good that you're bringing that up right off the bat because we can talk about like what does that mean for anyone who's caught up in that or similar circumstances.
Have you seen anyone pull the handbrake and just kind of veer to the right? I mean, it's you can think about course correction in your life. It's not something you can just do overnight.
I know someone who is more on the animation side of the spectrum who just released a short film titled I Can't Do This Anymore. Yes, and it's autobiographical and it's very honest. And I mean, she just gets right into the topic. And it's that's not so unusual. So yes, we're here because I work in post-secondary. We have the same concerns from our students, like they're about to graduate into these conditions. What is it going to be like for them? So, yeah, I do think people are asking some very fundamental questions around what their next move is going to be.
Is the is the right term viability? Like, is this a viable career? Is it a viable skill that I have? Is this a viable business? Is that the right kind of question that people are up against, wondering what is this thing that I have and will it stay alive? Or is there some
Yeah.
other undercurrent?
Um, I think I think the question of what is my skill, what is my viability in the future is a legitimate one. Here's how I break this down, and here's where I think we can start getting into the why are things like this and how do you actually move forward? This is my view, that anyone who actually decided to make a commitment to this field, regardless of what your creative career journey was, probably recognized that there was something in you that made you want to do this compared to other choices that you could have made, right? So, along with that comes a whole series of oppositions that you encounter, right? Like the whole thing about the starving artist myth. I think that, there's a lot in there to unpack around the messages that we get from family, the messages that we get from society, the messages that we get from government in some cases, the messages that we get from our own school. If you decided to be a doctor and you decided to specialize as being a brain surgeon, and as a result of that specialty made a lot of money, I'm willing to bet no one would label you a sellout. But for some reason, when you're a creative person and you actually start leaning into your own desire to make money and to have a business and to have a successful career that includes making money, suddenly that label starts making its way into the picture. So there's problem number one. It's the fact that anyone, in my view, that has actually decided to make a commitment to this, or recognizing the pressures and those attitudes that we face from people who care about us as well. Like this is not just like oppositional voices kind of outside. Like that ends up working its way into our psyche. So
Yeah.
there's already a whole series of barriers that we have to overcome to make that commitment in the first place, to see through our education, to see through the start of our careers, and then to say, I want to make a business out of this in some cases. So the challenge becomes when we start moving through that journey, now we're in it. Now we're trying to find safety. Now we're trying to find ways of um, staying authentic to why we actually made that choice in the first place. Because there's sellout labels that end up becoming part of what we navigate. Some people really wrestle with this, like they make deliberate choices that they will only allow their financial success to go so far because they're afraid of that
Yeah.
label and they think that's gonna make them feel a certain way about themselves. I think there's a lot of shame in there that we have to shine a spotlight on and actually say there is no shame in this. There is no shame in making this choice and wanting to make money. But here's where we get back to the question around the Technicolor announcement and the way that I think a lot of people are feeling right now is that when you made that choice in the first place, you were probably recognizing that by virtue of seeing yourself as a creative individual, that gave you the ability to adapt to change. It gave you the ability to become more aware of your own choices that you could make because when you work with a client, you're solving their problems. When you're working with a shot, if you work in visual effects or animation, and you're being tasked to render something in a particular way, you are solving problems. Like the inherent quality of any creative individual who applies that creativity is you are a problem solver. Stop. So now the question is, here's the problem. The industries are changing, the jobs are changing. A lot of them potentially are not coming back in the same way. Now your client is yourself. Your client is your journey. And how do we get back to thinking about ways of solving that problem? I think it's about taking a step back and recognizing, well, why did we make this choice in the first place? And did we really think it was going to go smooth sailing? No, of course not. We knew there was going to be bumps in the road, and that wasn't going to just be personal. It was going to be across potentially the entire industry. So here we are, and now our project is ourselves and our industries. So where do we go from there?
I love that perspective. I I recently, this is like so recently, had a conversation with somebody who will say like they're probably in the beginning of a course of exiting their business that they've owned for years. They're just starting the process. And one of the things that you do in selling your business is get a valuation. And then one of the things, your job from the point you get the valuation till you exit is to increase that valuation as much as possible so you can get that maximum return on effort. The person probably should double their profit from whatever it was, 10%. They should probably double it to 20%, let's say, for example. From when I use those words, what this individual who's trying to exit their company and get the maximum valuation, the the first kickback I got from them was as if I was, you know, pulling their child out of their hands and saying, "You, I don't care how ugly this kid is. I don't care what the struggles is. You know, it's all about profits. I'm the mean bad guy that's looking for money." And they just couldn't wrap their mind around what they kept calling a compromise. We can't compromise the creative that way. I'm saying add 10% profit. I can't compromise the creative way. It's the immediate gut reaction. And then I have to slowly, as I've done over the years, slowly introduce the idea of like, no, you're not compromising quality. Quality and 10% are not related. They're just not related. And the creative person you are is what I'm trying to actually get back to work and saying, can you do something creatively different? Then what I would say is they're overproducing for their clients. If you're giving the clients more than they're paying for, it's not a compromise. It's actually just right sizing it. But they're in our industry, these are really bad things you can't put together. You can't put in creativity and profitability, or into in to some degree, even a bigger picture. You can't say creative, career, and success together because no one wants to be a successful creative. They want to be, as your book says, they want to be the starving artist. That's a lot more legitimate, I guess. It has a more virtuous kind of presentation. And you're kind of saying like, Tim, everyone, like, listen, you're in an industry. This is work that needs to be done. You can get paid for it. And we're not talking about compromise. We're just talking about a realistic view of like how to find the value of what you're worth and then charge for it and then capture it and lives out something successfully.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think you're hitting on something really important, which is that we are accustomed to undervaluing our own work in the economy. I think the roots of that is actually our education, but that's a whole other talk. But I actually think that we are trained and educated to believe that the industries that we represent, and like, look, even if you're a classically trained painter and all you're painting is your heart's content and you're selling that on an open market, you're still participating in the economy. Like this notion of, I don't want to work in an industry, I'm an artist. Guess what? You're working in an industry anyway. Even if you are a fully independent artist of a particular type and you're not working within a defined studio that has a commercial output, etc. Like we have
Yeah.
separated that. But I think that's part of the issue. And I is saying, look, everybody's working in an industry. Let's just accept that because we're all participating in the economy. The question of what you're saying about you can't put creativity and commercial and success together. I think how I break that down when I hear that. And by the way, when I speak to high school kids and I ask them how many of you want to, work in a creative field, and all these hands go up, and inevitably you'll get a couple that say, "Yeah, I do, but I don't want to be a sellout." And my answer back is, be a sellout. Because unless you challenge those attitudes right from that early age, you're going to be dogged by that question. And ultimately, again, I think that comes back to the way these education systems ultimately train us. But I think that the question around why you can't pair that thing together is that we believe that there's a conflict in authenticity. Because if you're practicing authentically and you're not making as much money as you should be, like you're undervaluing your own work, well, that means like I'm a real artist, I'm a real designer, right? Because I'm not taking that extra step of increasing my profitability. Um, Let us just say outright, there is no necessary connection between degree of commerciality, degree of commercial success, and degree of authenticity. We think that there's this scale that the more commercially successful you are, the less authentic, therefore, you're being as a creative individual. I do not know any other field in the economy that creates those correlations. I have seen commercial work that was absolutely astounding, and I have seen work that is deliberately not commercial that was absolute junk. And
Yeah.
so there's no necessary connection between these things. But because we've been raised with these values, we actually hesitate to say, yes, this is an industry. And I really think that the more that we get over that attitude as creative practitioners ourselves, the more we can let go of the shame and actually start asking the questions around how do I actually now evolve my business, evolve my practice to take advantage of the opportunities that are truly out there.
And let's talk about like the heart of this issue of why you wanted to tell people this, right? You're not cold-hearted or just trying to tell people that. The real concern is that if you don't adopt some of this thinking, you actually won't have very long of a career. You're not going to be very institutionally helpful or valuable to anyone else. And the thing you actually want to do for a living that you're really, really good at, that you've been given a unique gift, because not everyone's gifted with this unique gift to do this, actually doesn't play itself out. And you compromise your own personal understanding, your own personal gifts, and you actually hurt the long-term economy of either like the small industry you're part of, a larger industry you're part of, the countries you're part of, because that industry is hurt by you not participating in it. So just simply understanding like how success is built, the decisions you have to make to be successful is important to keep the economy going and keep your career going so that you can actually live out the long career you deserve. Those are all really good reasons to have an understanding of this whole proposition. If everyone's a starving artist, no one else is going to get into it. It doesn't grow. You don't last very long. You're going to become a realtor or a life insurance salesman. Nobody needs that. They need you to be the creative that you are.
Exactly. And I think the way forward in this particular moment that we're in has to do with recognizing that, yeah, there may be a disruption happening, at least for the time being, in the studio, the traditional studio system, the traditional workplace employment frameworks that many of us have come to work in. Um, but look, this is not a confirmation of the starving artist myth. When the finance sector goes through one of its corrections, and notice our language changes when we talk about different sectors. It's a correction in their case. But when they go through one of their corrections, people don't bail the finance sector. They know that it's part of a cyclical period and that coming out of that cycle, it's not going to be exactly the same as it was before. Things are going to have to change. So now the question is, now what has to change? And I think the tools of how we have to manage our careers in these particular circumstances, to me, are very clear. It has to do with the fact that you have skills that made you want to do what you're doing now. Those skills are likely not just applicable to the field that you're working in, they're likely applicable to other creative fields too. If you actually do a bit of an assessment as to the application of those basic talents you have into other creative industries. And so it is possible to actually do that assessment of, look, I'm really good at 3D modeling. I'm really good at design. I'm really good at music composition. Where can those skills actually be now ported back into? I think we have to do that work. I think that's part of what's being called on us right now. And then the second thing is many of us started careers eventually working in traditional studio settings that are now being disrupted. And what is now emerging from that is the need for more individuals to become entrepreneurs, to lean into the new business opportunities that a lot of the more established studios perhaps are a little bit slow to adapt and to. And so I think if you're in a position where you've lost your job or you're not getting as much work as you used to, go back to those same principles. Your commitment is to yourself. Go back to why you did this in the first place. Do an assessment of your skills beyond the particular ways that you've applied them before. See if you need to upskill, but then ask yourself, look, maybe I just want to take more charge of my career and not be reliant on other employers. Maybe I have to start something myself. Get into the entrepreneurial mindset because that's how we reinvent things. We don't do it by going back into the established practices. We do it by the disruption leading to the change. And if any sector can do it, it's ours because, again, we are trained to be problem solvers. But now we have to turn that lens onto ourselves, not on our clients, not on our tasks that someone else is giving us. And I think there's a huge opportunity now as a result of that disruption.
That that's like maybe the biggest node moment is this idea of why don't you use your creative problem solving brain to solve its biggest creative need, which is your career. And if we're in a correction or a change or a pivot, reapply that mind back into who you should be as a career, and then let that brain show up. Then giving up or you know disappearing completely from it because you just haven't taken the time necessary to actually employ yourself, or as you said, follow the calling that you've been put your talent has pulled you into.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I love that.
Mark, I've sold two of my studios and had to come to terms with, I guess, reevaluating who I am and who I need to be. But when there's like the input side, like I guess there's the output, like what you do. But when you're looking at the input, what are some of the big questions you get people to ask about what's changing? Because right now, I work in a studio where we're seeing changes and we're calling around to see who's working, who's not working, where is the money right now. But what are the questions that people should ask when you're trying to look at how is the industry changing apart from Technicolor shutting down? Like there are medium-sized changes too to start seeing patterns with.
So you're asking about the inputs, more of the
Yeah,
inputs, is that
yeah,
right? Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think that we need to do more about trend spotting for starters. Like we need to look at what is actually happening in the culture, what is actually happening in society that's creating needs. All right, that's the entrepreneurial mindset. You're actually searching for what are the needs and how do you actually respond to that need with great ideas that you have coming in. So, for example, are there particular trends in the products that people are buying? Are there trends in the content people are accessing? Are there trends in how that content is being accessed? What are the changes happening there? How does that help inform decisions that you can make as an independent creative to actually take advantage of those opportunities? These things are possible to research. So I'll give you a quick example of someone I know who was a well-employed illustrator, did character design for feature films for a long time, suddenly couldn't find work in that anymore. Um, Pivoted to doing illustrations using this kind of infinite zoom technique where it was an image that then you would zoom into that image on your tablet and then you would get to another image and you'd zoom more and more. And basically what he did was he created a technique that allowed himself to tell a story the more that you zoom into his picture. So it's a little bit like a choose your own adventure. And then he found a way to actually commercialize that. Then he found a way to actually attach that and sell his technique to brands that actually wanted that for their own platforms. So where that started was he was disrupted. He found an opportunity and a cool technology that he thought was not being properly used. He developed a technique that allowed him to amplify his brand to attract new interest and different partners that he had before. And now uh, he is seriously he's now at the point where he's attracted investors to come into that company specifically for that application. So I that takes work. It takes work to spot those changes. It takes work to take your curiosity seriously enough to try something out. But I really think that that's an example of the kind of opportunities that are possible out there now.
Yeah, I used to always go into this mindset of like, I'll just deliver pizzas. And my wife would say, "You're not delivering pizzas. That's not going to help anyone if you just go and deliver pizzas." But
Yeah.
yeah, you do need to dig deeper and I guess fight for your right to be creative.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also be curious and let your curiosity lead you to things that you want to discover and then stumble upon things and then just don't look at it as, oh, that's interesting. Like look at it as, what if I were to do something like that? What would be my spin on it? Because I think we're all accessing this content, but a lot of people don't necessarily think about turning that into a new business concept for themselves.
Is some of your desire to strengthen the community around the creatives so that we can have open conversations about success and open understanding about pivoting and encouragement that this is a higher priority and should be, the gifts that we'd be given should have greater value and not compromised? Is that some of your desire in your teaching and your writing and your purpose is to build up a commonality of lifting each other up and not um, allowing for like the lesser valued starving artist myth to take over as like a meta story?
Yeah, 100%. And that was a big reason why I just put the effort into writing the book. And it really kind of boiled down to, look, we know that this is already a wonderful community. That's already clear. But there are particular ways that I think creative professionals are put in positions to be made to feel lost at particular moments of disruption that make us feel like we don't have control over our futures. And what I wanted to say is we do have control over our futures, but we need to adapt a new set of skills and a new set of understandings of where a lot of that belief came from, because I think this is quite collective. I think this is in the way that we actually educate people. I think it's the way that you're processing these signals. So the book was really a way, and a lot of my work outside of the book is really a way of just trying to empower creatives of all kinds to uh, recognize that this is still your responsibility, even if the roots of how a lot of these factors transpired for you are much bigger and systemically. They're much bigger in terms of some of the social attitudes that we've had to endure. I think creative professionals have as much in them to empower themselves and each other, as much, if not more, than many other sectors of the economy.
I I guess like so, I want to more and more empower the conversation because the I honestly feel like the way the world's shifting, and if AI is taking over and technology is taking over, it's actually the human brain, it's the creative mind that's going to find and stand out above the technology. I get, and I wouldn't argue that the need for technology is there because we've entered a media world where we have to create more elements than any human should have to produce. It'd be torture for humans to have to produce that volume of work. Um, but the creative person or the creative mind is what we actually want to leverage into more and more conversations at a deeper level. And for too long, we've compromised what a creative person was supposed to do. We've basically told people creativity is being an artist, spend lots of hours doing art over and over and over again for somebody else's purpose, and not really advance yourself into greater creative thinking, creative problem solving. Even in the example you gave of somebody who invented something, like there's more opportunity to open yourself up to. And so if a technology is giving you efficiency, there's actually the next level up. And I think a creative community with real understanding and honest communication can actually build each other up and encourage each other that way without, again, having to explain, hey, I still believe in the creative person and I don't want to sound like a sellout, but maybe we should be smart about business or be smart about the industry we're part of. Like we should have to get over that need to apologize in order thinking shrewd or in smart in business or smart in career advancement. It doesn't have to be just business, but career advancement. so that you can mature and have a long life in it.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think that there's a lot of work that we can do within these communities to actually make more sophisticated, for lack of a better term, the the independent business skills in creatives in general that can actually enable all members of a team or all members of a community to think strategically around what those opportunities are for greater commercial success and greater career success that leads to increased income. That's ultimately
Yeah,
our goal.
yeah, and longevity. I mean, I've identified the four stages of a creative career, and it's only the first two stages that use your creative mind as an artist and leverage that to scale. And the next two is leveraging your community and your experience and your knowledge so that you could have greater influence and exit longer, have a longer career for it, and contribute more to the overall creative energy that's out there. But we have to mature into that. And I got to be honest, I think industrially, we want to keep our artists immature so that they stay good, cheap, and commoditized, opposed to
Mm.
being a creative person and a creative problem solver, which creates greater value and greater purpose. But you might compete with me. So I might not want you to advance because I'm afraid the competition might hurt me and we're afraid of that competition. And you like to say, Tim, wake up. We're in an industry. Of course, there's competition. Like you'll never avoid industry thinking and growth and expansion, no matter what career you're doing. You have that part of it. Of course, it's part of our journey creatively as well.
Yeah, and it all comes back to that, doesn't it? Which is this is an industry at the end of the day, and it's going to have the same conditions as other industries. It's going to have competition. It's going to have disruption. It's going to have periods of growth and periods of pullback. And we can become resilient in how we actually adapt to that and see them as opportunities, including the AI opportunity. I mean, we didn't have a chance to really get into that, but I think that there's legitimate concerns around what that technology can do. I'll just say quickly, but um, I feel like we do need to expand some of the more popular discussions around AI to actually recenter the artist, the creative individual into what the technology can offer, to enhance their creative positions, not just leaving it in the hands of business people who will probably bring in AI technologies for the sake of efficiency. And you know where
Yeah.
that's going to lead if we actually don't recenter the artist into that equation. So that's where my interest in the AI question comes in right now.
Yeah. My takeaways from your book and the podcasts that I love, and I want to help preach this up for you is one, the best investment you can make for your creative career is in yourself. So understand that you are important, that you have a calling, and there's something really, really necessary to the work that you have to do. But invest in yourself, meaning that don't be a sellout for the dollars you deserve. Don't be a sellout for the kind of work that you're going to do. And don't be a sellout to the long term needs of your career or short term gains or letting what's common dictate what you're going to do specifically. Lean into those ideas. I also like that you promote education, that you're saying, hey, kind of like wake up to the realities of what industry is, what business is, and what purpose is really about, and understand that that's a necessary part of your journey. And don't leave it to someone else or just luck to make those things come about. And lastly, I want to say my big takeaway is that you push confidence that from the position you've lived out in yourself and helping a lot of creative people get into this industry is that you really truly are something that can solve this problem with absolute confidence. Why believe anything else? Even if the mill shuts down or whatever the big earthquake is around you, the fact that you're still standing, you survived, and you're out there playing in the game shows that you are doing something and it's legitimate. Have confidence in your ability and your mind to do that work, and then kind of stay alert and keep on contributing as much as you can in any field.
Yeah, because ultimately
How,
this is in our DNA, isn't it? Like, we
yeah,
could have made other choices and we didn't. So, live them because otherwise you would be you would be living that choice, wouldn't you? And yet you're here. You're here in this room now having this discussion.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah. I mean, I appreciate you.
my mum kept all my
Go ahead,
school
Mark.
reports, and I reread all my school reports from year 3 to year 12. And it was like the only teacher that was supportive with my English teachers and my art teachers. And I was like, oh man, I was so screwed. Like I had no choice in this. It's been tracking for a long time then. And then yeah, you do have to keep living those choices because the path, you've made the path by walking so far, and it's not going to
Yeah,
Yeah,
stop.
absolutely. And we need to encourage that more in each other as well. Like we need to remind ourselves of that, especially in times like this. So I really hope creatives don't leave their fields of choice. I do hope they adapt and they are open-minded to where the opportunities might lie and that they can move into those and not be so attached to my creative journey has to look like what I thought it was 2 years ago, because I think that's another barrier. I think we can really hold on to reality we want to be true and we make choices based on that attachment as opposed to looking at it around, well, maybe it could lead me into this other field that I wasn't thinking about before. And I think that's part of the research we can do to become that very flexible creative.
yeah, I love that. I would be open for anybody else who has a question for Mark today. His book is called The Starving Artist Myth. And the subtitle here is "Bust the Stereotypes and Find Success in a Creative Career." So you put the real word out there, Mark. Success in your creative career, which of course we all want success. That's why we all watch the Oscars, or why we pay attention to box office numbers, or whatever these big items are. We can recognize success in others, but sometimes when it comes to being our turn, we don't want to accept success. We think it's more humble or whatever it is to kind of push it away. But absolutely necessary to being part of what we're doing in our industry for our jobs. And many of you are creative entrepreneurs, so other people are depending on you to lean into this more and more because you're not just advancing your own career, you're advancing their career, and their careers are you're in your hands. So even these principles are even more important for you as you take on that responsibility. Um, any other questions, thoughts from anybody out there? I know
I
you're
have
all
a
kind
I
of
have a
hanging on.
comment.
Oh, good.
I have a
What do you got,
comment
hon?
that maybe it's not quite a question, but I guess maybe it's a point of discussion, right? I feel like it is pretty bleak for the field, period. I think the pool of talent will shrink. It will have to shrink just because we work with so many artists who are specialists who will lose their job, clean up artists in the cell animation process. I mean, jobs won't be there for them. And I think we can agree that not every artist is a business-minded person. They are artists because they did not want to go into business. So
Yeah.
I've been part of many schools, in terms of like just mentoring students, and I do have a concern, honestly, is looking at curriculums at these schools, and they're learning the same curriculum that from 20 years ago, were designed 20 years ago. Um, how are they going to find jobs? How are they going to adapt quickly? I mean, we studios ourselves don't even know where the heck we're going. So how would the students know that? And a lot of artists go into this not to become business people. They learn one trade so they can be really good at it. And those trades might not even be there tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I think usually the key word there too, Hung, is that they learned a trade
Mhm.
instead of leaned into something that's more career. But there's
Yeah.
also saying that the one with the knowledge is one with the burden. And you personally, Hung, I stepped into this idea of building that mentorship network around the world where you're opening up doors to virtual agencies and virtual interns so they can come alongside and learn real life opportunities. Um, because you understand it, you're the one with the knowledge, you have the burden. So we do have
Yep.
a responsibility when we have the bigger picture knowledge, don't we?
Yeah, and that has happened to our, fly on the wall program many times. It's like when people come in and they actually came out of the program after being part of it, not want to do what they intended to do anymore because they found a new passion. out of that process, you know? That's why I strongly advocate for that, because there are a lot of times you go into an internship, you actually committed to a trade very early on. You just get out of school, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say, "Oh, I want to become a cell animator," or whatever. You should try a few things to see if actually your calling, your true calling, is what you learn or not. Right? I think
Yeah.
that's Mark Cuban who said, "Follow your grit and not your passion." And you
Yeah.
got to find out what that is.
Mark, when
Yeah,
you
and I
work with
think,
students, thank you, Hung. Mark, when you work with students, how do you help people find that calling that they know that they could, you know, like they're making an investment towards something that doesn't have a compromise?
well, I mean, you do it in part by just giving them an immersive experience to help them decide whether or not this is something they really want to do, for starters. You want to replicate the experience in the education program as much as you can get to, as close as it is in the actual industry that it's related to. Now, some programs are better at that than others, quite frankly. And I really hear the point that Hung was making around 20-year-old curriculum. I think there are some schools that are very rooted in a particular tradition. I think I think though that generally there's different flavors of educational approaches out there. And we also have to send the message to our students and to ourselves that you're allowed to change your mind, that that's not a failure. If you go into a program and you get that immersive experience and you realize that's not what you want to do, then you should change programs. And, the good schools have advisors that actually enable those students to think about that seriously. The problem is we have socialized a lot of our kids and ourselves in thinking if you're in a 3-year program and you don't finish in 3 years, there's something wrong with you. If you don't finish in 4 years and it's a 4-year program, that's on you. I can tell you statistically, the majority of students do not finish in the prescribed amount of time that their programs are. But we don't
Mm.
like to talk about that. It's taboo. People need the whole industry is nonlinear. Your career is always going to be nonlinear, but we somehow put a value on the education side that that is linear, and you're going to go from your school to your job, and that you're going to have a smooth sailing journey from the get-go based on your education. No one who works in this actually had that experience. And the studio owners and the trainers know that they had to upskill those students that came into their programs too. So, and on the business point, I'll just say one thing about that because I think it's a really important point, is it is true. If you talk to a lot of us, we got into what we got into because we didn't business was not our thing, right? But we've created that separation. My argument is we've actually created a separation between the business side and the artistic side, and there's a root to that. There's an origin to that that actually connects to the origin of the stereotype of the starving artist. We have embedded education practices that draw from those traditions that actually, by design, separate the awareness of these skills and talents as being a part of the economy. And we avoid educating our students in that new necessity. And if we address that, then even if you don't see yourself as a business person, you can at least spot trends. You can at least acknowledge where the commerce is going. You can at least have enough of an awareness of it that you don't see it as being so alien to the way you navigate your career. Because ultimately, a lot of us are entrepreneurs. We're lucky enough to find studio gigs for a long time that now are really being disrupted.
It's so smart. Yeah, the head in the sand approach to your career, like you don't want to deal with it, you're afraid, and you want someone else to solve it, and then just give you a job. I think that you have to understand in the creative side, you don't really have a choice. A lot of jobs are almost like very literally created on the spot because the challenge is a new challenge, the execution is a new execution, and we can use existing technology or skills, but we're always making something different. We're not making the same cogs and the same wheels. We're making pixels, but they're the stylistic approach. That's what we're doing. So um, that's the greatest part about what we're doing is we don't have to make the same thing twice. But it's also the reality and the challenge that we're up against, and everyone should lean into that as a need and an opportunity for this industry. Yeah, I love it.
Mhm.
Well, Mark, I thank you again for being part of this thing. I saw that Matt put the link to your book right here in the chat. So anyone who wants to grab it on Amazon, it's great. I personally, I this is one of those books I like to encourage people. Some books you have to buy so that you can dog ear it and underline it and take notes in it. And others, you can just listen to on Audible. And your book is one where it's going to be not only marked up, but it's going to sit on the shelf so I can grab it and pull certain chapters or sayings out of it for years to come. It's one of those books you have to get hard copies version of it, just so you have it in short form. Matter of fact, you should probably buy it in graduation season. This is the year everyone should be buying the book and giving away to any creative person they know so that they can kind of get a jump start on their career and not, take 5 or 6 extra years before they kind of come to the epiphany of what you've already kind of taught us here. So I appreciate you putting it out there. I'm looking forward to seeing you. I'm going to see you at FITC this year. I'm going to come to Toronto, be part of the conference up there. So I look forward to seeing you face to face when we get a meetup in Toronto.
Amazing. Can't wait to host you up here in Toronto, Tim. Thanks so much.
Yeah. We'll do
And
a dinner
Matt.
when I'm up there and we'll grab some other people to join us. It'll be really great.
Amazing.
And thank you all for joining us today. Please feel free to follow Mark on LinkedIn, be part of the conversation and encourage him and the work that he's doing. Mark, if there's ever any students or things that you know that you need to be sending to us in our community, let us know. Hung's network might be a really good network for you guys. Actually, the two of you should connect so that his internship programs and your students might really like to kind of join anyway. So open book here, anything we can do to help you and with the students you have up in Toronto, we'd love to be part of it. And thank you so much. We'll tell everyone when the podcast comes out so you can learn more about what do we have going on, but I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. All right, everyone, we'll see you again next Wednesday if we don't see you beforehand in the small groups. And I appreciate you, Matt, for joining us, and we'll see you again. Thank you all.